I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor. If you have a laser device for training and you want to take it to the next level, or if you're looking to get into using a laser device for training, check out the products at laserapp.com. LASRAPP.com. You can use code CSP2021 for 15% off the items you've selected. And thanks for checking them out. Now, I watched, like I said earlier, I was watching a few videos of yours. I had seen some before, and I'll just jump to the end of everything I'd written down. When I first got into this, I was in my early 50s. I found this real late in life. I was like, how did I not ever see this?
Yeah.
And shot it one time. I'm like, oh, I got to do this. I was always doing rifle stuff before.
Okay.
And you know, I go out there and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I qualified expert in the Marine Corps like 5 times. I'll be good. And I got out there. I was like, oh, I'm horrible. I had no idea how bad I was, and slow. Dear God, was I slow. But so I started looking at videos, and I now have a grip it's a combination. I don't know how I would mix the names, but it's a Vogel Seeklander grip.
Okay.
It's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of my grip. But you said something that was very interesting. You said, I've got it written down, so I'm going to read it here. You felt that next to trigger control, grip was one of the most important aspects of shooting, and more important when shooting fast. So exactly what do you mean by next to trigger control and all of that?
Well, I mean, I think trigger control is the most important thing for sure. I think it's the hardest thing to master, and it's just when you're shooting fast. That's the one thing that people have the most trouble with is to master trigger control. There's so many guys, they've got everything figured out. They practice a lot. They've got the grip down, but they lack trigger control just simply in the fact of being able to move this finger without moving the rest of your fingers and the rest of the hand. And so they got the whole low left thing going on for right-handed shooters. And there's just that's the hardest thing to master. I'm not forever about that, but the grip, I mean, it matters with speed because, you know, if you're not, I always tell people, if you're like your average Joe Schmo that goes to the range in this country, what are you trying to do? He's standing there. He's trying to hit a bullseye or shoot a good group or hit a pop can or something, but he's almost entirely concerned with accuracy. He's very small percentage of people will ever worry about speed, right? They just don't do it. And so if you're not concerned about speed, the grip doesn't really matter so much. All that really matters is that you could have the worst grip in the world, and as long as the sights are in the right place and you break the shot without moving the sights, then you can shoot the best group there is. But with speed, we care about what happens after the shot. We want to get shot number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, on target as fast as possible. And the stuff is measured in hundreds of seconds. So all else equal, it's pretty simple. The less the gun moves when you shoot it, the better you're going to shoot. All else being equal. I mean, if I'm going to shoot 6 shots a second, and so-and-so is going to shoot 6 shots a second, and his gun moves 1.5 inches on every shot, and mine moves 3/4 of an inch on every half as much. If everything else is equal, whose group do you think is going to be better? Mine's going to be better because there's less variables. The gun's moving less. Again, everything else equal thing is kind of hard to factor in, but it totally matters. So, you know, further forward you have, the more muscle you have on, less it moves. The less variables you have, the better that you shoot. And there's so much with a lot of people don't understand is the timing of everything too. Because the grip, how your fingers are and how your hands are and how you torque and all that stuff, that's the part that, like, I guess I can see, an instructor can see. What you can't see is the timing. A lot of people have shot a lot, but they've not shot a lot at speed. And so it takes shooting a lot at speed to develop that timing, because you really are pushing against the gun during recoil in such a way to just guide that gun preferably back to the same spot. And that is it's a feel thing. And there's no substitute for that. So it's like, well, I see the analogy watching 2 guys throwing darts. You can watch 2 guys, a baseball or whatever. Watch 2 guys throwing darts. Technique-wise, they look exactly the same. The stance is the same. They hold the dart and finger the same place, all this stuff. But one guy, he hits the bullseye a lot more than the other guy. You can't say that's because of technique. It's because of what he has inside him, his ability inside him to do that. And there's a certain amount of that in shooting also. So some guys get frustrated because it's like, man, I got the grip down and it looks like I'm doing it like you, and my fingers here, my thumb's there, and they're super particular on that, which not that you shouldn't be, but it's not all about that. It's about what you can do inside that internal feel thing. And it's hard to teach people that. You can explain that to people, but people have to learn to develop that on their own, because there's so much to that. I mean, on average, yeah, the better the grip, you're gonna do better. But I've seen some guys with a not as strong of a hands, with a little bit lower of a grip, but they have the timing, and then they're gonna shoot better than somebody that has this total crushing perfect grip. And so it's just all those things factored in together is what matters.
Okay. And it's interesting because, I mean, you basically explained exactly why, and I finally realized it eventually, why I was so terrible when I first started, which was I was like, no, I'm going to break the shot and not move the sights, because that to me was what trigger control was.
Yeah.
It wasn't all this other stuff. So I'm just like, all right, hold it nice and still and just squeeze and pay. Oh, good. Center. Next one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just people don't generally realize what they don't realize what they can get away with, because everybody's, taught with the whole shot thing. And it's just when you pay attention, I always tell people when you're doing things, I mean, pay attention to the score, whether you're a competition shooter or not. You're measuring your performance. Half of your performance are the hits you have on the target. The other half of your performance is the time it takes you to do it. They both come together to give you that performance. And people ask me all the time, should I go faster, give up some accuracy? Should I go slower and be more accurate? I always have the same answer. What gives you the better score? So whether you're going on hit factor or IDPA scoring or some other type of scoring, have a system and, go for that. People just they want to pay attention to one or the other. They want to be, I got all A's or whatever, conveniently forget that they were 6 seconds too slow, or that, I did it in, whatever the time is. And then, but you had 2 misses and 3 Ds. It's the score. And even if you're not a competitive shooter, that's what and if you just focus on that, you're going to naturally figure out the optimum balance of accuracy and speed. That's going to get you, that optimum performance.
Now, how much when you shoot basically irons the whole time, and you have the whole time, did you shoot more target focused, or because I remember in one of your videos you mentioned your Glock sights, you like a wider
Bigger
space
notch
in the rear side, exactly, so you can get that front sight. You said it was much faster at speed.
Yeah, you can just it's easier to see the front sight at speed when you have a bigger notch, because it's not visually getting in your rear sight is not visually getting in the way of your front sight so much. So it's just flat out easier to see. I remember it was back in 2006, and Dave Savigny and Scott Warren gave me their sights, the Savigny Warren sights, which are still around, and I didn't know much about the differences between all that. I was just using some normal type sights, and they gave me those, and I put them on my gun and dry fired. And I remember just like, wow, because it had a little bigger notch. And I just remember that was kind of a revelation for me. I started to see the differences and stuff. But with the sight, and I kind of give a whole speech on that too, but it's, in short, it's a lot of people seem to think it's either target focus, or sight focus, and it's simple as one or the other, because it's totally not. It's a matter of degrees. Obviously, the closer and easier a target is, the more focus you have on the target, and the less you need on the gun or the sights. But and the farther away and the harder the shots are, you're still going to see the target, but you're going to have more and more focus on the sights, whether that be just the front sight or maybe the whole sight picture. So I've never put a number on it to say there's like 4 or 5 different levels or 6 different levels, but it's totally a matter of degrees. And through experience, you figure out, obviously, to see just what you need to see to make those shots consistently. If you're not seeing enough, you're going to miss more, right? If you're seeing too much, then you're going too slow. They can both be detrimental. So you kind of learn that through experience. The human instinct, though, is always look at the target. The more panicked you are, the more nervous you are, the more time pressure you're under, the more that's happening at the target, whether the target's moving or more reaction to it, the more your instinct is going to be just to look at the target, point the gun, pull the trigger. And that's only going to be, it's only going to work out some of the time. So it's a whole skill set to develop that.
All right. Now I'm gonna, you made me think of a question, but I'm going to jump from competition to law enforcement. I know there's a high miss factor in those high stress situations because of exactly what you just said. They're looking at the target or they're looking at the threat. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And not necessarily their sights. Do you, with all of your experience, do you think that red dots on duty guns would help alleviate some of that, where they can still look at the target and pretty much don't need to focus on a sight per se? They just need to see it.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like, it's the red dots, they have advantages and disadvantages. I think for the most part, it depends on the person. What I tell people is, in my opinion, if you're going to carry a red dot sight of some type for real life self-defense, you need to be at a certain level. Not necessarily the greatest shooter, but not below average. Because what I see is everybody's going to do better with a red dot when you do the slower stuff. You do distance, you do smaller targets, you do a lot of B8 par time stuff. You're not really pushed for speed. Everybody is going to shoot better with the red dots there. And where I see kind of your middle of the road to your lower level shooter do worse with red dots is on the closer stuff, on the full size human size targets at 5 yards, 7 yards. I see them a lot slower because they can't find dot. Either one, they can't find the dot, or two, they're not learning to shoot without the dot. A lot of guys, you put full size target out there at 5 yards, iron sights with a dot. With iron sights, they'll come out and whether they see the sights or not, whether they need to or not, they will come out. They will shoot. They will shoot the gun, even if they're totally target focused. Unfortunately, with iron with a dot, I see a lot of guys come out and they won't shoot unless they see the dot. And the guys are good enough to not have to do that, but I'm just saying what I see with like a lot of your average cop guys out there. And so they take that extra half a second or whatever it might be in order to find that dot and then shoot. Now, whether that's better or worse would depend on the situation.
Right.
So that the one, yeah. And it's so that, yeah, I'm not for necessarily pro dot or against it. I don't really think it's the be all end all like a lot of people kind of want to put out there. But it definitely has its advantages. So to your average, do I think your average cop out there would be better off with a dot in real life type stuff? No. I will say that.
Okay.
Now, on engagements past 10 yards, if it's further distance, probably yes. On close, at a certain range, it's almost like super close, it doesn't matter. And farther, you have the advantage with a dot. But kind of that middle range, like that, I don't know, man, that 3, 4 to 8 yard range where I think so much stuff happens. It happens so fast that a lot of guys, if you're not pretty good, you're still going to be just looking over the gun and shooting. And are you going to do better with that dot, or are you going to do better? You just can kind of see that slide a little bit. There's a lot of gray areas in there, but it just, at the end of the day, you have to train everything though too. And I'm kind of a believer in shooting a lot of like moving, disappearing targets and shooting at like realistic size targets. I'm not really one of those guys that does a lot of shooting at circles and dots and B8s, which I know that's very popular with a lot of people, in large part because you're going to see more of a performance difference between red dots and irons on those things than you will shooting full size targets at, faster at the realistic ranges. So I don't know if any of that rambling makes any sense, but that's just kind of that's just my rough thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Go down a lot of different. I could pick up a dot and shoot it, shoot it just fine. I think at the end of the day, if you can shoot, you can shoot. So I don't really believe there's a lot of magical secrets to shooting a dot that give me an iron sight shooter that's a really good shooter, give him a dot, he's going to be able to do just fine right off the bat. Because if his index is there, that's the main thing, really, right? Coming out, can you have the dot there every time? And it's a lot easier to do if you're standing still. It's a lot harder to do if you're moving, if you're leaning to the right, leaning to the left, coming out of a car, doing strong hand, support hand. I see all but the best shooters, I see a lot of times have issues with that. And so, again, the question is, if it takes you another second or so to find the dot and shoot, maybe that's going to be better. Maybe it's not. It just depends. The one advantage that the iron does have is obviously, if you index the gun out there, if the sights are not aligned, you see where they're at. 100% you can see exactly where they're at, and you can correct it very quickly. Obviously, that's, in my mind, the biggest disadvantage of a dot is just the fact that if you present the gun out there and you don't see the dot, you don't know where it's at. And you're going to have to move. And so it's just something to contend with. But overall, it is obviously easier. I mean, that's if you see the dot to look at it, it doesn't take as much talent and as much skill to see the dot, because you can look at the target and the dot kind of at the same time. You don't really have to have a focus difference like you do with irons.
Right.
So totally see how that is an advantage. So yeah, definitely has an advantage, but I'm not I'm not going to sit here and say like that it doesn't have any disadvantages, because it does. But it's kind of whatever guys want to do.
Yeah, and I carry, but I refuse to carry anything smaller than the size of an RMR, because I have found through competition and that just that little bit of stress that's a smaller size window with a dot. And if you don't dry fire enough to get that index down properly, that's hard to find. Yeah, in a time constraint. It's like, holy cow. Yeah. When I first started shooting it, I went up to other shooters. I'm like, hey, how are you finding your dot so fast? Because I'm not getting up there going, where in the heck is this dot at? Yeah. So, it totally is. So again, it depends on the situation. And in a real life gunfight, if the dude's 12, 15 yards away, not moving too much, probably better on the dot. If the dude is 4 or 5 yards away and moving fast off to the side, and you got to move, I think most people probably would be better off irons, because there's not many people that are going to, I agree, be fast enough to really come up, see the aim, and that kind of speed with moving targets. That's just, I'm just saying that from experience of running lots and lots of people through drills with both guns. I believe it. Is all I'm just what I would see. So yeah, I totally get it. So I was going to ask if you thought that you could overcome a lack of trigger control with more grip, but after our discussion, it's obviously that's not the. Yeah, a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, it's just so much. At the end of the day, it's not human nature to move this finger
100% by
Independently.
itself. And it's just like the
Yeah.
faster you go, the more pounds you got to press, the more likely you're moving your other fingers and the rest of the hand at the same time. And some people genetically do that more than others. That's why I'm big on the dry fire thing. I really am, because it's just if you rep that enough, if you spend enough time trying to just simply out there and working that finger very fast and trying to keep the sights centered on the target, your body actually changes. It actually adapts and will change and will allow your finger to work more independently over time. But it's totally something you train yourself to do more so than just some magical flip switch that you flip in your head and then you can do it. It's just not that easy.
So have you read any of Lanny Basham's stuff?
Yeah, I read the Winning in Mind book back in 2007. I usually give that book a decent amount of credit for winning my first nationals, because 100% big on all that mental, all the mental stuff. I mean, the directive affirmation and just the positive everything. So I'm very big on that.
I was going to say, because when I was listening to one, I forget which podcast it was. It might have been Art Levy's. You mentioned like you said, direct affirmation and some other things that I thought was pretty interesting. I was like, it sounds like he's read some Lanny Basham stuff. Now, do you feel like you would have been able to accomplish what you did without reading it? Like just take longer to get there?
That'd be a total guess. But it definitely helped. At the end of the day, the things that you say out loud that come out of your mouth tend to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I really do believe that. And you just, by saying all that, you're tricking your brain into believing, that it's supposed to happen almost more than it already happened. And I think it matters in the critical times. When you think about, just being an athlete or being a cop in a certain situation, even, or whatever, you spend so much of your time training, and then it comes down into very, very, very small amounts of time that calls for performance. I mean, just think about the competitive shooting and how much time an average person would spend in a year practicing, and you go to nationals, you know what you're doing? I mean, it's how you perform in 2 minutes. Everything you do in a year is how you perform in 2 minutes. You go to World Shoot every 3 years, maybe 3 minutes. I mean, you're on the clock for that long. So it's just like, that's what matters. That's the only time it matters. I'm leading up to that and everything. But if you do this stuff mentally, then in those critical moments, you are more likely to feel like it is supposed to be you that does this. And I always say, you take two guys competing against each other in anything, and assume for a minute that both those guys are equal. Usually it's not, right? But let's assume they're both equal, physical, all this stuff. But the one guy believes a little more than the other guy that it's supposed to be him that wins. Like, he just believes that more. There's no way to know that. There's no way to measure it. That guy will win more. Guaranteed. He'll win more. Doesn't mean he'll win every time, but he'll win more. There's just that. And that's how you create that with that book and the directive affirmation and saying positive things. And there's still other factors. I've been dead calm in some of the biggest situations. I've been more nervous in some of the not as big situations, and I can't put a finger on it sometimes, because it's just, I'm human. I'm a human being like anybody else. But overall, average, the more you do that, you're just adding the odds in your favor. Some people get that more than others. Some people are just not very deep people anyways. Not that they're not intelligent. Some people are intelligent. They're just not very deep, I think. And they might not really get that or buy into it as much. But it's like anything else. When you I proved to myself earlier that it mattered. And I believe it mattered. And I do believe it matters. And so I'm definitely big on the mental aspect of stuff.
Now, earlier, we had talked about where the sport has evolved since you first got into it. It's evolved since, Rob Latham won his first national championship. 20 years before you, there was a big evolution. Now we've evolved further. Do you see coaching ever becoming something for these higher level shooters, especially the way, like you were saying, there's more top end guys shooting, competing against each other? Do you ever see something like actual coaching going on like you see in other sports?
I mean, it's totally probably will come more with the future. I think you have some of that now. It depends on the people. I think actually I think it's more common in other countries where there's like literally like a budget for that.
Wow.
I won't speak a lot. I'm not going to say exact specifics because I don't want to, but I know that it seemed to me, and I've been on a lot of international stuff, and where other countries like, oh, you're the best shooter in this, one of the best shooters in this country. Okay. Well, this is what your job is now. And so that, like, it's just it can be a little more involved, in the end of the day, it's because of money. Somebody's paying for that.
Right.
Now here, somebody's dad or somebody's independently wealthy or whatever can do more of that thing. I know most of the best shooters from a personal level out there. I don't really know of anybody in my mind that really has a coach per se, or that it's totally necessary. But if it became some kind of a real spectator sport where you've got a lot of money on the line, I suppose more people would be trying that and trying to up their level. So I guess the future will kind of see on that. But at the end of the day, shooting's it's just not a spectator sport. It's not,
right.
You be a national world champion. What do you win? You win a trophy. You might win at certain matches. Oh, a gun that might if you sold it might cover half of your expenses for there. But there's just it's not like you win nationals and there's $100,000. There's something like that. I think
that would definitely change the game.
Yeah, I think it would change it. It would probably change things. But now I think it's almost like it's more of an amateur sport than it used to be. I would say, because you have more matches and the prizes. You go back even before my day and to hear some of the older guys talk, and there wasn't as many matches, and you could win some real money. Like if you won nationals, you won Steel Challenge, like you could come away, because it's like all these sponsors put what they're going to give into just maybe 5 matches. Now they're doing it into 100. So there's not as much in any match, and the TV, used to be probably a little bit more television. They had the stuff on ESPN a little bit. I don't know. Good luck getting what we do on ESPN now. So I'm not complaining one way or the other, but I'm just looking at that's how that is. It's about attention. Just like the Olympics, if you were whatever, Michael Phelps or Simone Biles in gymnastics or swimming, you could become a multimillionaire. You can be the world champion in something else. Nobody knows who you are whatsoever. Those guys are still totally broke. They'll be living in their mom's basement, and there's just because they don't get attention, and that's what it would take. That's what it would take to get the money and all that stuff. And I've thought about that kind of thing a bit. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I'm content with what I'm doing and everything, but it's interesting. Interesting, just the differences and all that stuff.
Now you've shot internationally. Are there any places internationally where you've gone to shoot and they've actually had prize money or anything more than just a trophy?
Well, I think there were some that I don't know any that I really shot that I had heard of some matches. Basically, it would come down to some rich guy that owns the range, and he wants to attract some attention, so he'll put up some money to whoever wins. Never I think I've heard of a couple of those, like in Russia. Nothing like super substantial. Yeah, like nothing more than what somebody like me would probably make in a weekend of doing a class, whatever. But it's so yeah, not really. I've never heard of the whole the Top Shot thing and the 100,000 and Top Shot and whatever 10, 12 years ago, and I was a little bit a part of that. That was the most I've ever seen as far as like monetarily wise you could ever win for some type of a shooting match,
right?
That I know of. So, and that was kind of that was a big deal at the time there.
That was a neat show. I was sad to see that go away.
Yeah, I ran for like 4 seasons, and I was an expert on the 4th season, and I almost got on the 1st season. It was kind of the quick story on that, which a lot of people ask me about. That is, I heard about it, and they're like, they're going to $100,000 prize. We're going to take some of the best shooters from all these different disciplines, throw them together, and whoever wins. And so I was applying, and then they actually called me, and apparently my name was on a list of top USPSA shooters. So they actually called me, hey, and I was like, well, I'm actually already going to apply. Anyways, long story short, I applied. I don't know how many people, I think maybe 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. I don't know how many people applied. They picked 100 of us. That's what I was told. They picked 100 of us. I was in the 100 they picked, and they flew us out to LA for a week to determine the 16, or no, was it 50 or 100? I can't remember. I think it was 50. They picked 50 of us. They flew 50 of us out to LA for a week to pick the 16 that are going to be on the show. And we get out there, and I see a lot of guys that I know out there. And anyways, I thought it was going to be a little more of a shooting contest. But we got there the first day, and the first thing they tell us on the range day is, okay, guys, the shooting is just one small part of this. You could be first out of 50 people here. Doesn't mean you're going to get on the show. You could be last out of 50. It doesn't mean you're not getting on the show. You go out, all they did was hand us about 3 or 4 different guns, and we shot a bullseye target 10 times with each gun. And I remember at the very end, I found out, I guess I was like 3rd or 4th out of the 50 people in the shooting. And I was happy with that because it was really all bullseye. So it wasn't anything with speed or anything. But you had to go through a bunch of other personality thing and psych tests and all that. I think the thing that mattered the most was the board interview at the end. And I just kind of figured out I fit the bill. There's like maybe 8 other guys here that like fit the bill like me, like credential wise, whatever. And they're going to pick about two or 3 of us and 2 or 3 of this guy. So whatever. I didn't get picked. And at the time I was a little upset about that. Now looking back, doesn't really bother me. I got on later as an expert, and I would have rather done that because it was set up to where, I mean, anybody could win. It's kind of a crapshoot type of thing. A lot of the guns weren't sighted in. They didn't use the same guns. I mean, there was like,
right.
It was, the end of the day, it was the show about, in my opinion, it was a show made to appeal to your average person and not your average shooter. And there was a difference there. I mean, it was totally great. It was a show about shooting on national TV. But it was, again, initially, I learned a little bit off of that okay, this is not going to be, in my opinion, a real contest here as much as what I would want or what I would be used to.
It seems like it was more reality-based TV.
Well, yeah, it was, and that's what sold. That's what people wanted to see. So,
right,
glad it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I heard actually that they were a little disappointed at the end of the first season when there wasn't any drama in the house.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing that just the fact how they would record you constantly and have hours and hours of you of footage and then pick out 30 seconds and maybe take it out of context and make you look a certain way. They can make just about anybody a bad guy if they want to do. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And that's just how that goes.
That's why I stopped watching the UFC's Ultimate Fighter. I couldn't deal with the way they did their season. I like the fighting part, but I could skip all the house stuff. I don't need that nonsense.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that, I guess that's what sells. I mean, there's the people that are really serious and like the details and the competitive stuff. Apparently that number of people that are like that is less and the number of people that just like drama. People gravitate toward drama. So
yeah, I look at social media.
I mean,
it's a reflection of that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Sure.
So there was something I was going to ask you about earlier, and I'll go ahead and ask it now real quick. You also mentioned something, I believe it was during Auric Levy's Shooter Summit, that you feel in dry fire versus live fire, you should be within 3 to 5%. And you even made the comment that your lesser shooters, or your less experienced shooters, whatever you want to call it, your A, B, or C class, maybe not even A, but B, C, and down, you find that if you run a drill, they get better and better as the drill goes along, and they might have a 15 to 20% improvement, whereas your higher level shooters will stay pretty consistent within a 3 to 5% distance or gap. And do you think dry fire? So what am I trying to say? So you don't use a timer except when you started. You recommend new shooters do use a timer for par times, that different type of thing. But do you think you can close that gap just through dry fire, or is it going to take an equal amount of live fire?
I mean, I think that would have as much to do with live fire as dry fire, but obviously it's just the higher level shooters. They know their ability, and they're able to come out the first time and come a lot closer to that ability than the lower level shooters. It's kind of like they don't know their ability. They can go fast, they can, but they got to work their way into it. And so it's not just dry fire and live fire. It comes down to, again, being particular. I think paying attention to time. Like if I go out to shoot whatever, a bill drill or an L-Pres or a plate rack or any number of other known classifier type drills. Like if I go out, I kind of know this is what I'm supposed to do on this time. And I go out and if I do it, and then I'm holding myself to that standard. And so if you do that enough, then you get used to coming out and just going at your pace that you should go at. Because you've paid attention to the times, and you've held yourself accountable to certain scores and stuff. And the lower level guys, they don't really know. They don't really do that because they don't really pay attention to that as much. Probably they don't really know the numbers. I'm like, okay, you did this in 5 seconds last practice session. Now I want you to do it right here, and they're going into that. And ideally, they would know, okay, 5 second pace. I know what 5 second pace feels like. This is what I'm going to do. Boom, and then they do it, as opposed to just like not really having any idea of that and just doing it. And I'm 7 seconds. Was that good? Was that So it's
right.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, being able to come out in the first try, come as close to your ability on the first try is what I'm talking about here. And I think it's just as much like in live fires and dry fire. It's both of those things, but it's just a lot of people, and they can accidentally go slow because they are not trained to go at that real speed is what I call it. And that's why I don't really do much at a lot of guys, instructors, other places, not so much competition, are like, well, do demos at half speed so that you do it totally correctly. I don't really like to do that because then I could accidentally go at half speed. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to not think about it 100% of the time, guaranteed I'm going to go real speed. I'm not going to accidentally, I snap back into my half speed mode. No, why would I want to go half speed? I don't want to say I don't have a half speed. I could do it, but I don't really want to get in the habit of doing it because I don't want to accidentally do it.
I feel like you'd have to be sedated to have a half speed.
Well, I mean, I can go slower, but I try to go at that. You mess up a little bit more. I tell people this all the time. Like if I have to do something one time when it counts, when everybody's watching, the cameras are rolling, I feel like I go about 90% because I can be a lot more consistent at 90% than 100%. Now, if you go out and like, okay, we're going to make a YouTube video and we can do this countless number of times and we're going to pick your best run, well, then that's different. I'm going to go 100%.
Right.
And I'm going to screw up a lot more, but I'm going to get that one really good run that's going to look good, and we're going to put that. I mean, it's just you got to be able to flip a switch in your brain and go back and forth between this is like balls out 100%, and this is like, okay, this is my one time when it counts right now. And there's a lot of good shooters that have, they're 100% is really high. They're able to do things at a very high level, but they probably wouldn't do as well nearly at a match when you only get one time when everybody's watching, pressure's on. And that's a different skill set than just being able to shoot something at a high score on something. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So some of the stuff we mentioned, but you post some very interesting things on Instagram, like the tip of the cigarette, the shooting the bee out of the air, the playing card on its edge on a mover.
On the swinger.
Yeah. I mean, I do some of my best thinking in the morning when I'm showering. It's like all of these things come to mind. Where are you when these ideas come racing through your head?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I'm just always like I said, because I don't shoot as many matches and stuff, and I've kind of gone a little more that way. Like I'm an adventurous person, and I'm looking to do a lot of things in life that I haven't done, and that goes along. Obviously, I'm into shooting, so I'm always thinking in my mind, what can I do? A lot of it is what can I do that I've never seen anybody else do. That's something different, some kind of. And I'm big on the whole moving different kind of. So it's always in the back of my mind looking for an opportunity to do something like one of those things that you just mentioned. I'm lucky enough. I live in a house in the country. I have a range right at my backyard. I can do just about anything I want to do. A lot of other people wouldn't have the opportunities that I do because of where I live and everything. But yeah, it's just fun to me. It's just interesting. It's neat. It's different, and
it's fun.
It's fun. I can put it out there, and it's just the same. Not I don't know, the same old run and stage videos. It's like I don't want to say I'm trying to be special. But it's like, okay, and I'm going to do that. Hundreds of other guys can put the same thing. Where there's I'm going to take something that I haven't seen. And it's fun. It's neat. And I like to do it. So
it keeps you interested.
See what else I can possibly come up with in the future.
I feel like you need to get one of those ballistic dummies, the new ones that are super anatomically correct with blood inside of them and everything. Yeah. I feel like you could have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that would be. Might have to look into that. I don't have one of those.
Okay. They probably give you one just because of who you are.
Well, might have to try that then.
There you go. All right, couple of real quick questions. One, so one of the things I like to ask people that have traveled around is their worst travel story. Like Linda Turnbull and Maximilian Grandis had their PCCs confiscated in Europe. Hwanzik Kim had an AR-15 pointed at his face in New York. We've got a Canadian couple. We know they've had a couple things. They almost got arrested in Italy. They almost lost their guns in Florida. I mean, just craziness. So what is your craziest travel story? Doesn't have to be worst, just craziest travel story.
Yeah. I don't know if I could say my worst one. Thankfully, I've never had my gun confiscated. I've never lost a gun. I've been delayed many times, and obviously that's a nightmare. New York almost arrested me there. The craziest travel story, just very short details on this, but I was detained in Romania one time for 8 hours. This was not at the airport. This was outside. This was out basically at some kind of which is why I don't know if it really counts, but I was basically detained. It was kind of like a discrepancy in a bar type thing. And yeah, I had a pocket knife, and I did not touch the pocket knife. I did not pull it out, but somebody said that I did. And I got down to the station. I got held down to the station for 8 hours. And yeah, eventually they believed me. I wasn't charged with anything like that. But for about 8 hours, I thought that maybe I was going to be, I was an outsider, and I didn't speak
locked up in a foreign prison overseas.
And it was like I thought it was kind of a money grab type of thing. I had some money on me, and I thought they didn't take it. I thought, oh, they're going to take all my money. I had maybe $2,000 or something, and but it was, point being, I was detained for 8 hours, and I thought I might go to jail and my passport revoked, and it didn't happen, but it's a little scary.
Yeah, so, your pucker factor is a little high there for a few hours.
Yeah, but that would be it. Otherwise, just a bunch of different delays, and they lost the gun for a day or two, or this or that. Like I say, the New York thing was, if I wouldn't have been a cop flying through New York, they would have arrested me. But I'm still a reserve officer, so I still have a badge. That was just a few months ago. Yeah, don't fly through New York. I didn't get my bag either. That just was a layover. I wasn't supposed to go through there, but they didn't send me through there. And that's the only way I was going to get to. I think I was going to LA. And they just, I was just sat in the airport for 3 hours waiting my layover. Did not get my bag. Got on the plane. Got on the back of the plane, almost ready to take off, and they stopped and they're like, call my name, come to the front of the plane, and you have a weapon and all this. I told, I just cleared it and this, and then they found out, you're a cop. Okay, all right, we'll let you go, sort of thing. But
that's kind of like what Juanczyk said. He was same type of situation, and the people who work in the airport, transportation folks, TSA, actually brought him over and had, look, we'll just let the New York police know. And that's when, he's like, they're like, wait a minute, we're letting you know what's going on and everything's kosher. But he said that dude pointed that gun straight at his face. He was like, whoa.
Really? Yeah, New York.
Kind of nuts.
Because Chicago or LA or San Francisco and I've flown to all those quite a few times. I've never had any issues, but I've always heard New York is just extra super like that, and they are. So if you ever going somewhere, anybody listening, and because usually I would not pick a layover in New York, but again, I was going to a class in LA, and my flight, wherever, Denver, wherever it was at, got canceled, and they're like, the only one that's open is New York. So it's either do that or I'm going to miss the class. And I just say, I'll whatever, I'm trying it. Because, for sure, if you're going to go to or from there, or if you're going to get your bags and try to check in the next day or something, 100% don't do that. I thought maybe I'll be all right just getting off the airplane, getting back on.
Right.
But nope. So that was, somebody else was telling me that they did that, and what they cost $17,000. I think they said it cost them. I really think it's like a money thing. They're just going to arrest you. They don't care if the law is legally. They're just going to do all this stuff, and they know enough people, and it's just going to cost a bunch of money, and that's why they do it. If I had to say,
nuts, crazy. All right, last question I have is, what does your make ready / visualization look like? So when they go make ready, what is that process you go through?
Well, it's mostly what you do way before that. So obviously I will have, once I figure out how to shoot the stage, visualize it a lot of times. And what I tell people, you visualize it, how you would do the stage over and over and over again until, and this is how I know I've done it enough, until I can do it in my mind twice as fast as what I will really be able to shoot it in with no hesitation. So maybe 10 rehearsals, it may be 50. But that's how because you have to be able to do it at a subconscious level. People are slow because you watch them, they have to think their way through the stage. They shoot the first array and they're like, go over here. They have these pauses. And so you run it through your mind until I can do it twice as fast with no hesitation. That's the main thing. At that point, once I have that down, then I'm there, and then it's at the low to make ready. I'm not really thinking much of anything. I'm trusting myself. I'm going to do this at a subconscious level. Main thing I'm doing is just taking a deep breath before the standby. Like, okay, I kind of got that first place I'm going a little bit in my mind, but at that point, take a deep breath, and then just, again, that goes back to the real speed thing. I'm trusting myself to go at that natural pace, because the last thing I want to do is feel like I have to go fast and feel like yourself get all tense and jacked up, because that doesn't go well. So I've already done my mental prep, taking a deep breath, and just flow. And that's how I would put that.
Okay, so I would take it then you probably have a fairly short make ready then.
Yeah, I take it out, and if it's USPSA where you're allowed to get a sight picture, I'm getting a clean draw, and I'm getting my hands on the gun, because chances are I might not have gripped the gun in the last hour or so. So I always do that just because it's like my hands stretch. If I can do that, my hands will stretch kind of to the gun, and it'll feel a little bit better in my hand if I kind of get one little dry fire in. But it's not. I mean, IPA can't do that, so I can totally not do it. But I don't. It depends. I'm super confident. I'll kind of go right to it. If I'm not, and like, I might take that extra minute and like sit there like you see people do, and run through in your head. But it just depends on the stage and how I'm feeling at that time. But okay. you gotta be relaxed, especially the longer, more complicated stage that it is. You cannot be all tensed up. So if you are, take a few extra breaths, relax, and you're going to go at your natural pace, and you're going to do what you're going to do. So
you sound you're only the second interview where someone said they know when they're ready, when they run through it as fast as they can. Jacob Harrington and John Browning said the same thing from the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, when they got up there, they said, we literally run through the whole thing as fast as we can in our head, and then we know we're there. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's and I can say for me, it's I would say twice as fast, but definitely faster, because it's like if I could do it in my mind, like if it's stage, boom, 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 reload, and step over here, boom, 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 like right there. I just did that in 5 seconds. I'm not going to actually do it in 5 seconds, but if I can do it faster in my mind, at a subconscious level, then when I get out there, and if the idea is while I'm shooting the stage, if my brain goes blank at some point, my body still does the right thing. And that's all that matters right there, is to not, because my worst fear in the stage is at some point in the stage is to like freeze up mentally and be like, oh, what do I do now? Oh yeah, I go over here. I don't want that to ever happen. And so when you can get it just as fast, preferably faster, like I say, literally even twice as fast in your mind, no hesitation, then I'm pretty confident that I will do the right thing. So I think a lot of people, again, knowing how to shoot the stage and having it be mentally programmed are not the same thing. A lot of guys know how to shoot the stage, but they have to think their way through it. If you have it mentally programmed, you're able to do it at a faster pace, and then you're going to ideally have no hesitation when you actually shoot it.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, Robert, that's all I have. Questions, or was there anything that you feel you need to clarify or add, or anything you want to?
Not necessarily. I mean,
plug?
I went pretty well. Plug. I just other than myself. I mean, I just do what I'm doing. I'm out there. I'm teaching classes, and primarily what I'm doing these days, my website, vogeldynamics.com. I do a lot of travel around. I do a lot of 2-day weekend classes, different places, and I have a private range in my house. I do a lot of People come from wherever for more private classes, smaller numbers. And then, I'm always open to kind of going wherever and doing classes. So most of the stuff that I get, I'm just people that would email me like, hey man, would you ever do a class in this area or whatever, they have a club or something. And that's how I end up with most of the stuff that I do. I have a few different classes listed on my website. I mean, a lot of it's I teach performance shooting, so I'm not a stranger to tactics, but I'm teaching more, how fast and accurate can you shoot, and which I think applies across the board, kind of whatever you're doing. Either a competitive guy, just kind of like to shoot for concealed carry, or you put your life on the line, law enforcement, military. It's all shooting skills. So that's, but yeah, I would say that. But that's really all I got.
Okay. So just go to your website, vogeldynamics.com, and you can.
Yeah, vogeldynamics.com, or just, I think if you just Google my name, Robert Vogel, it comes up first too. But yeah, either one. But
it's exactly what I did.
All right. Well,
once you said you were coming on, I'm like, all right, let me do my research. I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff here.
Okay.
So it worked out.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, no, yes. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been great, and got a lot of different things covered and talked about and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right. Well, hopefully I'll run into you somewhere down the line or something.
I hope so. I sure hope so.
All right, man. Okay, you too. Thanks a lot.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.